Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Soul Seekers podcast, where we believe that hunting has the power to transform lives through primal adventure as we share our mission of mentorship is conservation. To learn more about everything we do, check out our show on Carbon TV or go to soulseekersnation.com. Freedom on, everybody, and stay soulful. If you want to take your shooting experience to the next level, then check out Coltac gear for 100% made in America products. Coltac manufactures specialty gear designed for long-range shooting, hunting, and other tactical applications. From their support bags, suppressor covers, shooting mats, and a whole lot more, Coltac is creating tough, durable, and innovative gear for both civilian and professional markets. Go to coltac.com to see all that they have to offer. That's cole-tac.com. If you are looking to get a new rifle or build your own, look no further than Kelbly'S. Kelbly'S actions and rifles have a higher level of accuracy and hold 92 world records set on either one of their rifles or rifle actions. Whether you're looking for an ultralight mountain rifle or wanting to compete in precision rifle shooting, Kelbly'S has you covered. Go to kelbly.com to find out more or give them a call as their customer service is the best. That's KELBLY.com. Kelbly'S. If you're looking to take your hunting to another level, there's no better way to do it than by subscribing to onX Hunt. If you want to get better at hunting and go deeper into your scouting, onX is the #1 GPS app for that. Join the millions of hunters who trust onX Hunt to find more game, discover new access, and hunt smarter. If you want to know more about onX, go to onxmaps.com/hunt or download their app today for a free trial. If you are wanting to become more accurate and deadly with your shooting, one of the best things you can do is upgrade your trigger with a Timney. Timney triggers are 100% made in America and have been since their founding, providing a crisp, reliable, and repeatable trigger break every time. I'll be shooting Timney triggers in my guns this year, and I hope you'll join me in shooting the world's finest trigger. Go to timneytriggers.com to get yours today. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Soul Seekers podcast. I'm your host, Johnny Mack. Today's episode is dedicated to all of you wing fanatics across America. Today we have the executive director of Rolling Plains Quail Research Foundation, where they are a 501c3 nonprofit where everything they do centers around quail and quail hunting as reflected by their mission to preserve Texas heritage of wild quail, hunting for this and future generations. Now, with that being said, this foundation is based out of the state of Texas. However, quail research is important across all of America, and probably mostly lower 48 states has some sort of quail population either now or at some point in history. So we got Ryan, and excuse me for butchering this, but I'm going to say it the way I think it's funny. Ryan O'Shaughnessy, if you are a Peel and Keen skit fan. He is the executive director here to talk about quail hunting and everything quail. So, brother Ryan, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, Johnny. I really appreciate it. Yeah, you nailed the pronunciation on that.
Did I actually get it? No, I was a little
O'Shaughnessy.
O'Shaughnessy.
You got close. But everybody after Key and Peel released that skit, everybody just knows me as O'Shag Hennessy now. So
that's right. Go down to the principal's office.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, brother,
if they're listening, I think I need to get a royalty on that episode.
Right? Or if you don't know what we're talking about, you're not old enough to listen to the podcast. So
Right.
I love it. Well, brother, you and I met at the Dallas Safari Club Summer Expo banquet, which was pretty awesome. It's always fun to get like-minded people in one room for the same cause and to be able to talk about hunting and the generations to come and preserving it and the conservation of it all. You have a unique background. You're from Zimbabwe originally. You now work for a nonprofit in America for preservation of quails. And like you've gone all over the place. So what's a little history on yourself? Like how did you end up coming here and why is hunting so important to you?
Yeah, thanks, Johnny. I guess I'll start at the beginning. We won't go quite as far back as the day of my birth, but like you say, I was born in Zimbabwe. I always say I grew up in Botswana. My family left Zimbabwe in about the mid-'80s and moved over into Botswana. I went to school in Johannesburg, South Africa. But my dad was always in the safari business, in the safari industry. So I grew up in that industry, and for as far back as I can remember, I've said this my whole life. For whatever reason, I just always gravitated more towards wing shooting. I loved getting a shotgun out at the end of the day and going and chasing francolin and guinea fowl in the savannas of Botswana, and it just really stuck with me. I did my undergrad and my master's at the University of the Witwatersrand in Johannesburg, in South Africa, and those early grad school projects, I worked on big game. And as I was finishing up my master's, I kind of realized that you can very easily get pigeonholed as a big game biologist if all of your graduate work is on big game. And at the time, I was looking for a PhD. I wanted to go overseas. I was considering either Europe or the US. I got a position at Southern Illinois University on a PhD on waterfowl. So it was pretty much what I was looking for, to transition away from big game and into a game bird.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. And then after graduating with my PhD, I got a postdoc down here in Texas at Sul Ross State University, and was able to start working on a couple of collaborative projects on quail there. And you always talk about what a small world it is. I started a hunting outfitting business while I was still a professor, just as a side hustle, really.
Yep.
One day I said to my wife, I said, we've got the dogs and we've got the equipment, and heck, I love guiding and I miss guiding like I used to do back in Botswana. Let me try to sell a couple of quail hunts, and that business just took off more than I could have expected, actually, to the point where I left academia for a period of time to focus on the hunting business full time.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a small part of me that during that period, especially after a year or two, it got real dry out in the Alpine area, the Trans-Pecos of Texas. And, a lot of those hunts, Johnny, I mean, they were pretty dang tough. I mean, you were walking 10, 12 miles a day, only kicking up 4 or 5 coveys of scaled quail. And my mind started to wander, and I kind of thought, wow, dang, I've got all this education behind me. I'd also completed an MBA while I was at Sul Ross, and it was just kind of fortuitous. A client of mine invited me to the Park Cities event, Park Cities Quail Coalition event.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't been in a number of years, and went there and ran into the right person at the right time. Our former executive director, Dale Rollins, he came up to me and asked what I was doing, kind of gave him a bit of background. And he said, well, Ryan, we're looking for a new executive director. I think you should put in.
Yeah.
And I did. And officially started there May 15th of 2023. So been there about 2.5 years and been loving it.
That's awesome. So one of the questions I have for you is, we're here at Soul Seekers, we're in the mission of promoting hunting. And more often than not, when people think of hunting, now this is my perspective, people think big game. They, you're like, hey, you want to go hunting? They're like, okay, yeah, I'd love to shoot a deer. Or, like, I don't know if I could shoot a deer. I feel like there's a large majority of people that just completely skip over wing shooting. And, you have the waterfowl fanatics. Like, people love duck hunting or they love goose hunting. But upland bird really, like, it's completely missed, I feel like. Do you ever feel that way?
Yeah, I would definitely say if you had a top 10 of most popular species, Johnny, I'd probably agree with you. Deer undoubtedly would be pretty high up that list, if not number one across the continental US. Behind that, I mean, I'm sure you would have other species of big game, and then you'd start getting into your turkeys and waterfowl. Like you say, waterfowl is a massive one. And then down that list, you would start to get into the wing shooting. And I think there's numerous reasons for that. Number one, I think, deer, I don't care what state you're in, you can find a deer.
Right.
Like you said in your intro, unfortunately, we're just at a point in time where our quail populations have declined
Yeah.
over the last 3, 4, 5 decades, and we just don't have the bird numbers like we used to
Hmm.
across the geographic distribution that we used to.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and so it's almost become a pretty niche deal, especially down in the south, and I would say out west.
Interesting. Okay. So I'm originally from the state of Washington, and up in the Northwest, I believe we actually only have one type of quail. I could be completely wrong. It's the one with the little feather off the top of its head. Let's see here. I'm trying to pull it up on the internet. California quail or
Yeah, so you've got
Gamble's.
California or mountain quail, and then California or valley quail, and then mountain quail in certain portions of the state too. So you actually have two species depending on where you are in the state.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah,
And I always, I went to college in Eastern Washington, which is more of an arid climate, and that's actually where
right,
you see the quail in the state of Washington. And you see them around town and just scurrying from bush to bush. And it's like, oh, that's a cool looking bird. Wait, that's an animal in which I could hunt. But it's always like a back burner idea, back burner thought. I've actually only ever shot one quail before. And I breasted it out and cooked it in a jet boil. And I was like, okay, that was cool, but it was one quail, right? It's like dove shooting. Like
right,
you don't get a whole lot. However, I love watching upland bird get worked by dogs. I love how it's
right.
just kind of you're taking a stroll, it's not high pressure, not high stakes. You're not waiting, 10 years to draw that one tag and like there's a lot more of like almost like a laissez-faire attitude when it comes to quail hunting, I feel like.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've always said I think that's what I really enjoy. When I was in grad school in Illinois, it was white-tailed deer and waterfowl. Unfortunately, we just didn't have the populations of bobwhite to go out and hunt. And I can remember in grad school putting a tree stand up and waiting for a deer to walk by, and I was like, man, this is kind of boring. I can't talk to anybody or anything, and there's just such a difference when you get out into the quail fields when you're with two or three of your good buddies and you're walking behind dogs that you've put a lot of work and time into training, and you can have that conversation, and those birds get up, and undoubtedly most of you guys are going to miss, and you give each other a good ribbing and
Mm.
laugh and joke about that, and it's just the whole atmosphere and social event of it, I think, is pretty dang special in the sport.
Yeah, yeah, I'd agree. And that actually just brought up the thought for me is probably why wing shooting is a little more on the back burner for people is because, a lot of people when they're buying hunting gear or they're getting into hunting, it's like, okay, I need boots, I need a pack, I need a weapon. Bird hunting is like, I need a dog. And then all of a
Right.
sudden that's a much larger commitment to get into.
Right, Johnny, and gosh, I mean, we could peel back so many different layers of this onion with that, but I think generally speaking, yeah, like you say, I think that is more of a barrier to entry than maybe some of your other hunting than some of your other hunting has.
Hmm.
Because when we think about wing shooting, you always think about having a dog. A lot of your quail species, birds like your scaled quail, for example, your gambles, your mountain quail. I mean, a lot of those birds are little runners. When you start thinking about some of your other desert birds like your Merns or Montezuma quail, I mean, those little guys are so cryptic and they hide so well that your probability of success on that hunt is so much lower when you're doing it without a dog.
Mm,
So
right.
I'm not saying that you can't do it without a dog, but your probability of success is so much lower.
Yeah.
And I think too, just generally, I think about my kids. I've got three little girls, and when you think about introducing a youngster into the sport, into really any new activity, you always want to try to have that success right early
Yes.
on, so it really grasps them. And I would say that's definitely a lot harder to do when it comes to quail hunting because You've got a young kid that's not as comfortable behind the shotgun. You've got that dog. You've got multiple birds flushing. You've got maybe other hunters, even if it's just their parent. There's a lot more that needs to come together for that child to have success
Yeah.
compared to deer hunting, where you can sit there in a blind. You can be nice and stable on a gun rest with that rifle,
Yes.
waiting for that deer to come into a location where you know it's going to be.
Yeah.
And so I think that's probably the biggest reason. Well, I think there's a few others, but that's definitely a primary reason why I don't think we see a lot of youngsters coming into the quail hunting early on.
Yeah. Do you now that's a great thing that you're bringing up here, and it's a great talking point because you know bird hunting, upland bird hunting specifically. If you are an outsider looking in, it's like okay, it's more of like an older gentleman sport. Like it's slower paced. It's may I'm really stereotyping here. Maybe
Right,
it's
right.
a guy who smokes a stogie and
Yep.
has leather bound books and
Right.
a study in his house like now, and that is I hate to say like a negative connotation of upland bird hunters. But with that said, it also kind of stereotypes for a reason. It kind of rings slightly true. Maybe it's the person that can't
Or
climb the mountain all the way, but can still walk the flat land, or maybe some rolling hills, or I don't know. Talk a little bit about that.
yeah, Johnny, I think I think generally as a generalization, you're absolutely right, and I would say that that characterization is mainly more common in your southern states, from Texas all the way across to Florida, and I would say that because these have historically been our strongholds of bobwhite quail. And
Mm,
there's a reason we call them gentlemen bob, because by and large, the country and the terrain that we're hunting them in is fairly flat, and it's easy to get around in and walk up to these birds. You typically, in my experience, your quail hunters are generally an older demographic.
hmm.
In my guiding business, I would say easily, though, the average age of my clients was in their 60s.
Really?
And we can circle back to that here in a little. But I would say that if you went out west, and specifically when you start getting into the mountains, and those mountain birds like your huns and your chukar, your grouse in the woods, sage grouse out in the sage flats in areas like Wyoming and everything,
Hmm.
I would say those birds are definitely a hell of a lot less gentlemanly, and you're gonna work your legs. Your muscles are gonna be burning when
Yeah.
you're up in the rocks in places like Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Wyoming, chasing chukar, and you're going up sheer-sided cliffs chasing these birds because your dog's on point 400 yards pretty much right above you, and you got to try to get there. But that really is to me the real beauty in wing shooting and upland bird hunting here in the US.
Yeah.
We're not defined, and I really don't want to insult deer hunters here. And I know deer hunters, you got your mule deer and your coos deer and your whitetail, but wing shooting, I mean, there's a habitat for everybody.
Yeah.
There's a species for everybody. If you want to go and climb through the brambles of the North Woods after grouse, you can do that. If you want to go into flooded timber looking for woodcock, you can do that. If you want to hit the mountains after chukar, you can do that. If you want to be in the South Texas sand sheet looking for bobwhite, you can do that. And I think that's really unique
Yeah.
and really pretty cool.
Oh, I love that. Well, I'll tell you, when I first moved to Texas and I started making some connections and I got taken out hunting for the very first time, I was with a buddy and he goes, "Hey, did you hear that?" I go, I mean, I heard a sound. I heard a bird. I don't know. He goes, "Dude, that was a Bob White." And I was like, a what?" He's like,
Yeah,
"Dude, that was
yeah.
a Bob White." I was like, "A what?" He goes, "A Bob White quail." He goes, "We haven't had those around for a while, and they're starting to make a comeback." And this was more down towards like Coleman, Texas.
Yeah,
And,
yep, yep. So
and
not too far from where we are. Yep.
yeah, and he was like, "Dude, those." those are the quail that you want to have around. And I was like, okay, like I'm a sponge, man. Tell me all you want. And I was like, well, why do they call him Bob White? Like, is it who's this? Who's Bob White? And he's like, well, you hear that sound like Bob White? And I was
Yep,
like,
yep,
oh, okay. It
yep.
sounds like he's saying Bob White. I don't know that. It was just that alone was a great hook to make me always remember Bob White and then be like, I should hunt these at some point.
Yeah, yeah. And Johnny, it's something that I usually, when I'm given a platform to get up on my little soapbox and really tell my Vespa, my personal story about why these quail are important to me. I think for most Americans, there's sort of a naivety to the tradition and the history of quail hunting here in the US. And I was really, I thought I knew a lot about upland bird hunting growing up doing it in Africa.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, I guess to a certain degree, based on those species, I thought I knew what I was doing. And when I was in my late teens, I got my first bird dog over there, which was a Weimaraner, which unfortunately, just through a lot of reasons like inbreeding and showing, Weimaraners aren't the greatest bird dogs. But I thought that first bird dog of mine was just the bees, man. He was the cat's meow. And it wasn't until I came over here and I actually brought my dog over with me. That's how much I love that dog. When I got to the US and I saw just the resources available to quail hunters, and I'm not just talking about the equipment and everything. I mean, obviously the amount of equipment and whatnot was phenomenal, but I mean resources that in terms of history, the books you can buy,
Yeah.
talking about the early days of quail hunting and the early days of the development of these dog breeds and how just about all of our hunting dogs here in the US were brought in at one time or another from Europe,
Mm-hmm.
and how they've shaped to what they are today to be suited to our American conditions. It's just phenomenal. And again, I think a lot of people miss that when they're out in the field being part of this legacy and part of this history that, I mean, it goes back hundreds of years. And there has been a heck of a lot of blood, sweat, tears, and money poured into the development of dogs and reshaping habitat to hunt a 6-ounce bird. It's really special. I mean, it's and again, that's the thing. I mean, hell, you can go out and you can shoot a limit of quail. Well, heck, what's that? What's 15 times 6? I mean, you've still only got like 52 ounces of meat
Uh-huh.
compared to going out and shooting a deer where you could put it in the freezer for the rest of the year almost.
Right. Right.
So it's definitely a different mindset, I would say, guys, going out after quail compared to deer. I'm not saying one's better than the other, but
Well,
there's definitely a mindset there.
well, one of the things that I know when regards to the defensive hunting is that it doesn't matter what type of hunting it is, it's all hunting. And
Right.
and so there is a time and a place and a season and purpose for each and every one. And like I got my start in my roots in hunting is with predator hunting.
Yeah. Yeah.
I coach high school football, boys and girls basketball, track in the springtime, and I wanted to hunt. And the only season that I could effectively hunt prior to big game was coyotes because it was
Right.
open year round. It's like, you get a hunting license and you can go out whenever, and there are no caliber restrictions on coyotes and all that. Well, then it was okay. I want to actually dedicate into like the concept of like I'm going on a hunt. I'll be back in a few days concept,
Right.
and that's where I got my start into black bear hunting because that opened up prior to football kicking off, and I didn't have time to dedicate for deer and all that. Well, what I learned very quickly in all that is I assumed, now this is the ignorance of a new hunter, but also the innocence, right? Like
Mhm.
ignorance and innocence kind of go hand in hand and get mistaken for each other quite often. And I just assumed that everyone who hunted supported all types of hunting. And I came across people and I was like, dude, yeah, bear hunting, you gotta do it. He's like, dude, I can't hunt bear.
Yeah.
I was like,
Yep.
what do you mean you can't hunt bear? Like, I was like, it's another season. So I'm a kid of the '90s. You know,
Sure.
the whole idea of Bo Jackson and bow nose and cross training and being really good at a lot of things, not just a specialization. And so for me, I considered hunting was hunting, right? Like, you get me outdoors, I don't care what it is. Let's go squeeze a trigger or send an arrow or whatever it is. I just wanted to go hunt, and that's actually still how I feel today.
Sure.
With that being said, there's this whole like mindset of like, nope, I'm a this type of hunter, or I'm a that type of hunter, or
Yeah.
so my biggest question right now, and we'll get into more about the birds, but how, from your perspective, how do you recruit more wing shooters?
So for me, more wing shooters, and I'm glad you brought it up and framed it that way, because I've had this conversation with a bunch of other hunters. A good buddy of mine who lives out in Alpine, and he was actually at the DSC event when we met. He's just crazy about buffalo hunting, and I remember asking him one day. I said, "Man, what is it about buffalo?" And he just looked at me and he said, "Well, Ryan, what is it about quail?" And I was like,
Uh-huh.
"Well, shoot, I could give you my justifications, but they wouldn't mean the same to him as they mean to me."
Yeah.
Um, but certainly, I just know from my experience with my kids and trying to really get them involved in wing shooting and trying to light that flame in wing shooting. Um, that I've gotten for it. I really think a critical key, and it's probably a little cliched, Johnny, is the dogs.
Yeah.
When you can get kids behind a well-trained dog, and they get to see that dog out there and see that dog fulfilling its purpose and its mission in life,
Yes.
and seeing that training go into place and that discipline in that dog just to lock up on point
Hmm.
and say, "Hey, there's a bird there," without breaking, and then that dog retrieving that downed bird, that I've noticed really hooks youngsters to the game. Hell, I still say it today. I always laugh, and God, Johnny, I mean, at this point, with my outfitting business, I mean, I don't know how many people I've guided. I mean, it's thousands
Yeah.
on wing shooting trips.
Yeah.
I still don't know how somebody who comes and hunts with me can't see one of those pointers lock up on point and not just think, "Man, that is the coolest thing ever. I'm going to go get me a pointer next week. I
Uh-huh.
need one of those." It's just so, I don't know. It really,
It's special. It's
it
very
really is
special.
special. It,
Yeah.
it really is special. And just that relationship between the dog and the hunter, is just phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to talk about that because, the whole idea of dogs being man's best friend, right? Like, there's
Right.
already that bond where this animal is bred not only through modern breeding, but just in nature. Like, the natural instincts of that dog is to point,
Right.
is to flush, is to lock up and do its job. When
Right.
it's doing that, it's living its purpose. And
Absolutely.
there's no more joy than any creature, anything in creation, than when it gets to do the purpose and what it was meant to do, right?
Buddy, I've always said, I don't care how much fun you or I are having when we're out there chasing quail. I can guarantee you that bird dog
Yeah.
is having 10 times more fun than we are.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see it in their face. You can see the way they run. You can see the way their behavior changes, and it's innate in them. I mean, they know when it's hunting season too. My dogs out in the kennels, when they see me walk by and they know it's hunting season,
Uh-huh.
they get so excited, and I pull that quail truck out, and you let them out of their kennels, and they run around, and they'll run to the back of that truck, sort of hopping up at the dog boxes, and you can see it's like, "Yeah, we're gonna go hunting. Let's go, let's go." It's just It's fantastic.
Yeah,
It
it's
really
beautiful.
is.
It's beautiful. I have a buddy of mine who he runs bear and cougar dogs,
Yep. Yep.
and like his life is those dogs,
Oh yeah.
and that's and people non-hunters, people that don't understand, and this is one of the things I learned very odd. Oh my gosh, I'm mixing my words because I'm bringing me back to middle school. I had
Yep.
a history teacher, Bob Guard, Mr. Guard. Oh man, I haven't said his name in a long time. He would always correct me on my speech, and speech is very important, something that we'll talk about here shortly. But when it came to things that were unfamiliar to me, I would call them weird, right? Like, oh,
Yep.
those people are weird because he was my history teacher, or like, like, oh, this is so weird. And he's like, well, they're not weird; they're just different, and it's something that you're not used to or not accustomed to, and so often we cast judgment on something from our own perspective, and that's why I truly believe hunting, when someone steps into hunting and experiences any form of hunting, it transforms their life because hunting is an experiential thing. You can't truly fall in love
Absolutely.
or understand it until you
Absolutely.
experience it. And whether you want to hunt, support hunting, or continue hunting, you can't really speak to it until you've tried it yourself.
Absolutely, Johnny, and that's such a critical thing. We always have the debate, and just like you said earlier, words are important, right?
Hmm.
And throughout my career, I've learned that it's very important for us when we're talking about hunting and the ethics of hunting and the resistance against hunting that we make a critical distinction. But there are anti-hunters and then there are non-hunters.
Hmm.
And those are two very different people,
Yeah.
right? The anti-hunter is somebody that's vehemently against hunting. They would like to shut hunting down tomorrow if they could.
Yeah.
Non-hunters are people like yourself that maybe grew up, didn't have those opportunities at first, that just never had that experience, and they're on the fence, right?
Mhm.
They're not really for it, but they're not really against it either. And so, like you say, I think the vast majority of people today are probably fall into that non-hunter category, just because of lack of opportunity
Mhm.
to be able to do so.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest challenge that we face as a hunting community is a lack of education surrounding hunting.
Mm.
And I mean that knife cuts both ways. You've got a lot of misinformation on both sides of the group. I mean, like you said just now, I mean, I see some stuff getting posted on social media from hunters and certain hunting associations that have pages on social media, and as soon as I look at those pages, I mean, I cringe.
Yeah.
It's just cringeworthy, and they don't necessarily fall in line with what my ethics are.
Yeah.
um but then again, who am I, to say that I'm the judge in all of this? I'm not. And so, wing shooting is just my passion. I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
And you know to each their own, I
Yeah,
guess.
well, one of the amazing things is that we as people are called humanity, and we are human.
Yeah.
Well, what a hue is a shade. It's a color. And
Right.
so what makes humanity beautiful is that there's so much variation within it, but we're all still a part of the same thing.
Right.
And,
Right.
and that's what makes this world beautiful. So,
Yeah.
um,
and
yeah, go
and Johnny,
ahead.
before we move on, I just wanted to mention a program that's man, it's phenomenal. There's an organization called Conservation Leaders for Tomorrow. And Conservation Leaders for Tomorrow really targets non-hunting graduate student level kids,
Hmm.
right? So kids probably anywhere from, I would say, I don't know, 22 to 28, 30, somewhere in there, that are in a wildlife program, a graduate wildlife program, and there's a lot of universities that have access to this program. And unfortunately, I don't know any of the particular details on how schools can sign up to it, but I'm sure if they got onto the Conservation Leaders for Tomorrow website, they could find that information. But what that program does is that it takes graduate students out into the field with mentors, with university professors that are hunters, and they basically get taught the basics of hunting. And these mentors share their personal stories with these kids that are a little bit older,
Uh-huh.
and say, hey, this is why hunting is important to me. This is why hunting is important to conservation. And I think it's a 3 or 4 day program. And on the last day, those kids, if they so wish, they can then go hunting, be it wing shooting or deer. And they get to make that decision towards the end of that. And that program really is just a really phenomenal program, because it really does give all the hard facts and information to those kids and those personal stories, and then just puts the decision in their hands.
Just let me jump in for a second. I just want to say that's a phenomenal program because I've encountered multiple biologists that work for state agencies that don't hunt.
Yeah,
And it's like, dude, like, I understand that you have a love for animals, but what you're doing 100% is for hunting, period.
right.
And so for you to work in this and be so disconnected from the purpose of your work, like this is I've never even heard of this program, but I'm on their website right now, and I already recognize a friend of mine that's a part of it. I'm gonna have to call him up and actually ask him
Yeah,
about
yeah,
this.
yeah. I mean, it's phenomenal, and like you say, Johnny, I was blown away when I got to grad school. To just the number of students that were coming in that had just never had that opportunity to go hunting. I always just assumed, man, I'm in a wildlife program. Surely everybody's gonna come from the same background that I do.
Yeah.
And I really do think it's important. It's not that I want to convert everybody to hunters. No, if you don't want to hunt, I'm not gonna force that upon you. But
But we want you to be pro hunting.
well, and yes, and they need to understand the value behind hunting, not just from a management perspective, but from a financial perspective,
Hmm.
because all of these state agencies are primarily their state funds. I mean, I think it's like upwards of 85% of local state agency funds from within the state. They do get federal grants and things coming in, but state raised funds within each and every state primarily come from the sale of hunting and fishing licenses.
Hmm. Yeah.
And so when you look at those funds, I mean, that's what's funding our WMAs and even our state parks, and a lot of the research programs. I mean, we write grants in response to requests for proposals. And being a quail biologist, we have an Upland stamp that we have to pay for when we want to go quail hunting, and that money goes into upland game bird specific projects
Mm.
that the state wants to research. And that's a really important piece of information that uh, I really wish more non-hunters and even anti-hunters knew,
Yeah.
because without hunters, our wildlife would be in a very, very bad shape.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that and to add to it, ballot box biology. Right.
Hmm.
And so that's why everyone truly needs to be pro hunting, even if you are not a hunter.
Right, right.
Because, hey, I know Ryan, Principal O'Shawn Hennessy over here. He's a good hunter, or he's a hunter, and he's a good guy. And so I may not hunt, but I want to support him on what he does. And so, I'm going to make sure I vote for the initiatives or whatever,
Right.
which is going to support him and his lifestyle, regardless of whether or not I am a participant.
Right, right. And I'm not an expert on social issues, but I think everybody listening to this podcast would agree that one of the biggest challenges we have with kids today is too much screen time,
Oh, yeah.
iPads, phones, and whatnot. And if we did away with hunting, that would take away so many opportunities for us to encourage kids to get outside,
Yeah.
and experience the outdoors. So I mean, I think there would be huge social implications to that. Heck, maybe we need to do a show, and we can co-host having a social psychologist on here to talk about those implications. But
How are you really feeling today? Is
yeah,
that the
but Johnny, I mean, I see it just with my kids. They come home from school, and I understand everybody's tired and everything, and they just want to sit and veg out on their iPads. And when we can get them out into the field on the weekends and have them walking around catching grasshoppers and horned lizards and explaining the different grasses and everything to them, they are different kids at the end of the day.
Yeah.
They've had that fresh air, they've had that sunshine, they've had that connection with nature, and I, I tend to feel like they fight a hell of a lot less. you know?
100%. So my wife and I, we have 3 young boys, and we don't let our kids be on screens during the week. Monday through
Yeah,
Friday, 0 screens.
right.
Not till weekends. And even at that point, I still limit their screens. I rather nature is healing. That's one thing that people forget. Is it actually there's studies shown, and I can't recall the exact study, but that
Yep.
they had 2 patients, and this there's done by more, but the story I'm telling is there's 2 patients with the exact same illness. One had a window that looked out onto a park, and one had a window that looked out into a parking lot. And the patient that looked out into nature healed faster than the one that looked out into the
Oh,
concrete. And it's just that's a simple thing, but I believe in grounding. I believe in a lot of the woo-woo concepts of we're all
and Johnny, look,
connected and
I can believe it. I mean, I have days where it's just a long, busy day at work, and I get home and I sit on the couch, and I know that in an hour or two, I really, when it cools down, especially this time of year, I need to go out and work dogs.
Mhm.
And after a long, busy day at work, there are days where I'll be honest, I just do not want to get my butt off that couch
Yeah.
to have to go out and run some dogs.
Yeah.
But the amazing thing is that as soon as I put those dogs on the ground, this is just exercising them. Instantly, when I get out there, I feel better.
Yep.
And every time I tell myself, man, you need to do this just for you, because it's healing, and it resets your brain, and it takes a lot of that stress away. And so, yeah, I mean, there's a heck of a lot to that.
Yeah. I mean, I did my undergrad in physical education, kinesiology.
Yeah.
And the whole concept of man, how do you go running or how do you stay physically fit or how the hardest part is the mental game with the very first step or the very first push up. The first time I did a burpee challenge last year, I did 100 burpees every day for 365 days. And
Man.
there was a lot of days, and a lot of people are like, oh man, burpees, they scare me or they're intimidating. They're not hard. I didn't put a limit on it. I was like, you have to complete them in 10 minutes or, it was like over a day, 24 hours, complete 100.
Just
Maybe
do 100.
yeah,
Yeah.
just do 100.
Yeah.
I would do mine all at once because I like to just knock it out and be done with it. And I'm a sweaty guy, and so
Right.
let me
Right.
shower and be good. But you know, when it came to that challenge, and I talked to people, I'd be like, the hardest part is the first time you put your hands on the ground. That's it. It's
Right.
actually getting into that position, getting into that mindset. It's like, okay, I'm gonna do it. It's not as difficult. And that's one of the things going back to hunting and the barriers to entry is there are so many things that seem extremely intimidating, especially when we're unfamiliar, or we're not coached up, or we're not mentored, or we're not taught these things at young ages or through experiences, right? Like that's why I truly believe that hunting challenges your courage first and foremost because you
Yep.
step into the unknown. You don't
Mhm.
know what's gonna happen, and if you did, people probably wouldn't enjoy it as much, right?
Right.
Like why do we go see new movies? Because we don't know the endings, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Right. And that's so true. I meet a lot of guys that tell me, man, I only got into hunting later in life, and it was just because I was so intimidated to get out there. And I really do want to push this message out there to your listeners and to some people that might be in this position right now, thinking, man, I'd really like to go out there and try it. There are a lot of hunting groups and hunting organizations and hunting clubs out there. And I can guarantee you, if you got hold of one of those groups and got hold of a local hunter and said, man, I've never done this before, I would really like to do it. Could you help me?
Yeah.
I bet 99.9% of hunters would say, absolutely, buddy.
Yeah.
Come on with me. I'll show you the ropes and everything.
Yeah.
Throughout my guiding career, and again, that's been thousands and thousands of people by this point, but I've always said, yeah, you know what, shooting a limit is cool, but you know what's extra special is getting that new hunter on their first bird,
Oh yeah.
because it's like chasing the dragon, right? Like they will never get that thrill and that natural high again. And I've had grown men, I've had women, I've had kids just start crying when they've had that bird in their hand, because they're just so happy to have been able to put it all together and experience that whole orchestra that
Yeah.
happens in front of you on a bird hunt. And it's the same thing for deer hunting and
Hmm.
bear hunting and whatever else.
Yeah.
And so really, I always tell people, man, if you haven't done it before, man, just find a hunter. They will help you. I guarantee it, because
Yes.
we love showing people. There is a little bit of ego involved. Like, we want to show you what we know, so
Yeah.
you think that I'm a badass and I know a lot. That's part of it. But it's man, I want to show you how cool this is. Like, come
Yes.
on out with me.
Yeah.
Like, I want you to experience what I experience.
Yep. Yep. 100%. And that is often forgot. I will say, I did, for all your listeners, if you are new to the podcast and you want to reference some older episodes, I did episode 276 was, when was the last time you did something for the first time? And that is something that humanity, we don't really like look at or consider in our day to day. It's like, oh, we're task oriented. So it's like, I know I have to do this, so I'm going to go do it. But when was the last time you actually did something for the first time and put yourself in this? I'm going to continually learn and grow and establish my skill sets or my place in this world, because that is scary. That's intimidating. That takes the courage to step into the unknown. And I don't know. It's just a beautiful thing. I love
It
it.
really is. Yeah, it really is,
I
man. It
love
really is.
psychology. I didn't realize it when I was in college, when I took an 8 a.m. Psychology 101 class that I absolutely hated. And it turns out like I actually really love it. So
Right.
anyways, okay, well, let's talk quails. Tell
Mhm.
me quails. Like I like I said, I only knew that there was one type of quail up until a couple of years ago. So what what is it that quails need? How can we help them? How can we support them? How do they help us? What is the ecosystems that they live in and how they interact with the other animals and species?
Great question, Johnny. And all right, so first off, across the U.S., we have 6 native species of quail: mountain quail, valley quail, or California quail, um, Gambel's quail, Mearns quail, scaled quail, and bob white. And quail are just such a unique species. All 6 of those species really require I wouldn't say very different, but unique habitat types. Um, but by and large, what all 6 of those birds have in common is nesting cover,
Mm,
nesting and escape cover. A quail is bottom of the food chain. Everything likes to eat them. They're small, little, fragile birds. Inclement weather, prolonged cold, hail can take its impact on them. So the biggest thing that they need is quality habitat.
Mm.
If you don't have quality habitat, it's going to be very difficult to maintain a long-term population of quail. So habitat is absolutely critical to these birds. I was very careful in the way that I worded this because weather is obviously absolutely critical to these birds too.
Hmm.
And we've seen through time that favorable weather, especially, well, everywhere, really, when we get good rainfall throughout the winter and into spring and through the summer, and you're producing a lot of good vegetation and insects for those birds. That's really important. More rain, more vegetation, more escape cover, loafing cover. That's all really, really important. I always like to say that habitat is really important, probably the most critically important, because that's the one thing, Johnny, that you and I can manage.
Hmm. Yeah, we can have
Right.
our actual hands-on conservation.
Exactly. That's the one thing that you and I can go out on one day to the next, and we can change and we can make better for quail.
Hmm.
I wish that that we could do the same with weather, and I really hope that you guys don't get a whole bunch of comments. Hey, well, there's cloud seeding now,
I
and
was
all
gonna
of that.
say there we can do a lot with weather, but
You
it's
know,
not necessarily
I
for the
am by
better.
no means an expert on that, so I'm kind of old school. I'm just going to steer clear of that. So, as a disclaimer to your listeners, I'm not a cloud seeding expert. In my opinion, changing the weather was dancing around a fire in a loincloth, hoping for rain.
Right.
you know, by and large, we can't change the weather, but on a day-to-day basis, we can change the habitat.
Yeah.
And good habitat really provides good quail when you do get that rainfall.
Yeah.
Good habitat can also sustain quail through drier periods. I mean, we all know that we've got El Nino and La Nina, which are defined by wetter cycles of weather and drier cycles of weather. And these typically fluctuate on a 5 to 10 year natural cycle through time. So if you pulled up the Texas Parks and Wildlife quail population trends, you'll see these spikes followed by these drops,
Oh, okay.
and
Yeah.
those are primarily driven by periods. If you overlaid weather data on top of that rainfall, you would see a real close correlation between those. As we get more rain, we get more quail. As it dries up, we get less quail.
Interesting.
But I think, Johnny, one of the things that ourselves and a lot of other quail biologists are trying to work on right now is how do we make the busts in these population cycles not quite so dramatic?
Yes.
And I think there's definitely been a big switch in the research lately to, hey, is there a way that we can mitigate this? I think we're really good at habitat management.
Hmm.
I don't think it really matters where you are in the country. If you're in the pine forests out in Georgia and Florida, man, there's some excellent biologists out there, and they can take an overgrown place or an unmanaged place and they can put it back into prime bobwhite quail habitat.
Hmm.
We can do the same here in Texas. Guys, I'm sure, can do the same out west for those desert species of birds. But I think the element that we're all kind of searching for now is, man, how can we go from having a quail under every bush one year to, man, we can't find a bird the next?
Yeah.
How do we mitigate that?
Yeah. So much, not so much boom and bust, and more just boom and decent. Right.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay, so when like this brings up to me in my head, like Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation will put in watering holes out on public land, whether it's drill a well or collect a natural
Yeah.
spring, and then just create a water source that animals can always go to. Is that something that would benefit the quail as well, or do they need something different, or I don't know? Explain on that one.
Yeah, so with quail, and I'll come back to water specifically here in a minute. Again, for quail really need that good habitat, and quail. We think the general theory right now is that they can be particularly limited during the nesting season. So
Okay.
with our bobwhite quail, we'll just focus on bobwhite because we're here in Texas. They really need these good native bunch grasses that they can nest under
Yeah.
during the nesting season. When those chicks hatch and those little broods are running around, they really need that good brooding cover too, because when you've got a little chick running around the size of a golf ball, again, just about everything can pick them off. So as long as you've got good brooding cover too to protect those birds, that's fantastic.
Hmm.
A little bit of diversity in the habitat is always really, really important. When you get that red-tailed hawk swooping down, even after a mature quail, you really want like a little leaf sumac, a bigger bush that quail can dive into to get away from
Hmm.
that hawk. So again, Johnny, everything gets back to habitat in
Yeah.
that regard. Um, and again, there's a lot of variation. Bobwhite, man, their habitat needs really do vary depending on the region that you're in.
Uh-huh.
What a quail would need here in the rolling plains or South Texas is largely different from what they would need, say, in Georgia or Florida. A lot of the principles stay the same, but the management practices
Yeah.
would change.
Does predation play a larger role in quail management? Or, I mean, obviously you got done saying habitat. Habitat for one species is habitat for a lot of species, and that's one thing that people
Right,
forget. Like, here we're talking quail, quail, quail,
right.
and it's like, well, that bush that houses quail can also house rabbits, and it can
Absolutely.
have, and
Absolutely.
so it is this yin and yang and this web of habitat for all species. So are quail like, are they more picked off by aerial predators, ground predators? Like, do they nest on the ground? Do they nest in trees? What? Yeah, talk. It's so much
Yeah,
unknown.
yeah, Johnny. So our data from the research ranch, and we've got about an 18-year data set on nesting success, predators, raptor surveys, and everything. And I would say specifically when you talk about raptors or predators, your aerial predators are the most significant
Okay.
on your quail. So again, having that good habitat to protect those birds from your aerial predators is really, really important. It's a complex conversation that I think often gets very simplified when you talk about predators. And I'm going to give you an example. And man, I hope nobody yells at me or anything. But I know that a lot of people on their ranches will actively go out and try to control the coyote populations.
Hmm.
On the research ranch, we tend not to control our coyote populations. Now, if we ever thought that they were just getting completely out of whack and we were seeing 100 coyotes a day, then yeah, okay, maybe then we would think about controlling those populations. But in these food pyramids, your coyotes are controlling a lot of your other mesocarnivores, like your raccoons,
Hmm.
your skunks, right? And those are nest predators and quail predators too.
Right.
So you can imagine if we went out and we just completely took out all the coyotes on the property, we would probably see a big explosion in our mesocarnivores,
Hmm.
like our raccoons and our skunks, because there's nothing pushing those numbers back down.
Yeah.
So it's really this interplay. But to get back to what you're saying, we obviously focus just on quail, and we use quail as this capstone species where we know that if we are managing for quail and when we're providing the habitat and managing the habitat for quail, there's really going to be a trickle-down effect for all these other species too, other grassland birds, small mammals, deer to a certain extent.
Yeah.
And so, by focusing in on that species as capstone species, we really know that we're helping a hell of a lot of other species too, which makes that whole ecosystem a lot more sustainable and healthy.
What's a typical carrying capacity for quail in a certain habitat?
So that's a great question. I don't know that anybody has ever really been able to come up with a number of carrying capacity in quail. I mean, these birds are just so small, and I don't think, man, and I'd love other biologists to email in if they've got any other info on this, but I don't think anybody's ever gotten to that point when said, man, I've got too many quail. They are depleting. Shoot, I don't even know what they would deplete. Like, I don't know. They're depleting freaking broomweed. I can't think of a time where that's happened, Johnny, but we do typically try to manage in a carrying capacity way, that if you have really good quail habitat, 1 quail per acre is excellent.
Okay, and that's what I was looking for.
Yeah. So that's usually our benchmark, right? So if you're going out and you're doing surveys and you're finding that you've got 0.2 quail per acre, okay, you're on the low side.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going out and you're doing your surveys and you're like 0.75, 0.8, 0.9, hey, that's a good indication that your habitat is in pretty good shape.
Okay, that's interesting. So what about the crossover on big game species to quail and the concept of like whitetail hunters putting in food plots? Obviously, that attracts the deer. What attracts the quail? Obviously, we know cover protects them, but what
Right.
are quail looking for? Like, so when I go to target hunt quail, besides
Yep,
having
yep.
a dog, if I don't have a dog for the day and I want to go hunt quail, what am I looking for?
Right. So quail, their diet somewhat shifts throughout the year, but the vast majority of their diet is seeds, seeds and green leaf vegetation. So your grasses and your forbs are very, very important. So really, if you had a property, Johnny, and let's just say it was a complete blank slate. Let's say you inherited an old agricultural field. What you would want to do is you would want to reseed that with a mix of forb and grass seeds. And then you would probably want a 20 to 30% mix of some of your woody plants, like your catclaw mimosa, your little leaf sumac, hackberry, or whatever. So through time, you would get those bigger structures, what we call quail houses, something that's about the size of a side-by-side Polaris Ranger, right? Something bigger that they can get into. So your forbs and your grasses would be providing the vast majority of their diet. We know that as birds get into the breeding season, like early spring, and those chicks start to emerge, those hens and those chicks eat a lot more insects at that time of year. They carry a lot of protein, calcium, and that sort of thing. So your insects become a lot more important at that time of the year again. Again, if you've got a really good diversity in your grasses and your forbs and your hardwood, your woody vegetation out there, insects are just the same as quail, right? When you've got more diversity in food opportunities, you're going to have a far more diverse invertebrate crop out on the landscape too.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense completely. Now, like wild turkeys, a lot of people will reintroduce turkeys and then they'll find actual success in releasing them and then repopulating them into an area or habitat. Do you guys find success in that with the repopulation of quail?
Yeah, so that's another great question that we get asked all the time, Johnny. First and foremost, I would say, a lot of people talk to us about pen-raised birds. Um, Generally, no. Pen raised birds are really not a good way of reintroducing birds. They just don't last. And I've always said, heck, even on Thursday at this event that I was at, I had a couple come up and talk to me, and they're outside of Houston, and they've got a big pen raised bird operation, and they were saying, man, we release 20 to 30,000 birds a year, but 3 weeks after the season, they're all gone.
Yeah, they're all dead.
And my response is, yeah, guys, if releasing pen raised quail was the solution, we wouldn't have a quail decline.
Right, we'd be crushing it right now.
Yeah, we'd be crushing it. I mean, heck, we could determine the numbers of birds we wanted every year if that was a solution.
Yeah.
Releasing or translocating wild birds is a whole nother animal. There's a lot that has to go into that, and understandably, if you're catching wild birds and you want to translocate and move those to a different area, obviously now you need to have state permits, what we call triple T permits, and those are governed by the state, and they're often going to request that there's a site assessment done on the area that those birds are going to be released to. You then would really ideally want some way of monitoring those birds. So that could be through VHF telemetry collars or GPS collars. So that's an additional expense on top of that. You then need the manpower to be able to track those birds thereafter to assess the success. And after all of that, Johnny, we really don't know what that critical threshold of a minimum number of birds is that you would need to move to establish a population. By and large, all of the translocations that we've been a part of and other translocations that we know, they've had very little success.
You know, I was starting to giggle there because that's a perfect segue into what my next question was is are these quail moving a lot, or are they stationary? You know, like if you have 10 acres of property, is the same quail going to be on that 10 acres the entire time? You know, what do you guys do?
Yeah, so typically, yeah, they're pretty philopatric to the area that they're in. From tracking birds for the last 18 years, we actually just revised our estimates based on some cool new GPS technology we've had out. From the research ranch, our new estimate is that for a bobwhite quail in good habitat in the rolling plains, they're probably using about 300 acres.
Okay.
So that's not to say that you're going to have one covey per 300 acres.
Right. There's crossover.
There's going to be some overlap. And, you know, when these birds come into a feeding source or a water point, those birds are going to intermingle, and you might have one bird from covey A leaving with covey B, and a couple of birds from covey B leaving with covey A. But generally, when we plot out all of our points, our new estimate is around 300 acres.
Yeah.
Now that's going to vary, Johnny. If you're in an area with lower quality habitat, those birds are probably going to have to move a lot more to find the resources that they need.
Right. And that's why animals congregate in great habitat, and you can see a majority of them all in one spot, because if it's good for that, they're going to find it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely.
Interesting. I love that. So what questions did I not ask? Because, and forgive my ignorance on this, that you feel like we need to get out for the listeners of this podcast?
Man, that's a good question. I would say probably the primary question, and this has just been because of a question that's been weighing on my mind, and it to me it's a sustainability question, right? And so a lot of your listeners might be surprised when I ask this. because they'll think, oh man, Ryan's a scientist. It should be a science question. And I've got science questions that are pretty prevalent in the scientific community, but I think this one is maybe more relevant because it gets back to how do we get new hunters into the sport of quail hunting? Because Johnny, if we can't do that,
Mm-hmm.
people like myself who are research biologists and guys that are working at TPWD, we're out of a job,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And we lose this recreational activity and this passion that we have.
Right.
And you know, we at the Research Ranch, there's a great organization here in Texas, Texas Brigades. It's a youth-oriented organization, 13 to 17-year-olds. They have, I think there's 10 camps. There's 9 across the state of Texas, and I think they had their first camp up in North Dakota on waterfowl.
Mm-hmm.
And these camps specialize in so there's 2 bobwhite camps. There's a deer camp. There's bass. There's ranching. Just really fantastic camps for exposing kids to the biology, the habitats, and the hunting of quail in this example.
Yep.
At the foundation, myself and my staff, we all volunteer at this camp. It's a week-long camp. We go out and we teach these kids everything that we can in a week about quail. And there's a competition within the kids. The kids get broken up into different groups, and the winning covey in this case gets to come out on a wild quail hunt on the Rolling Plains Quail Research Ranch.
Cool.
And so last year we had 10 kids come out, and we took them out and we got them shooting some clays and got them comfortable, showed them the dogs, went through all the safety stuff with them, and then got them out into the field. And we got 8 of those 10 kids to shoot their first bobwhite quail.
So cool.
Wild bird, right?
That's cool.
And that is really important to us, to get those kids that exposure.
Mm-hmm.
And while we're kind of proud of that and we can pat ourselves on the back, Johnny, what scares me is, okay, now these kids are leaving. What's next for them?
Yeah. Who's going to follow up with them?
Who's going to follow up with them?
Yeah.
And that is something that worries me and that I'm passionate about. I mean, I would love to open up the Research Ranch just to, a constant youth exposure camp, but I can't. Unfortunately, we've got other responsibilities, scientific responsibilities that we need to focus on.
Yeah.
And unless those kids have a mentor that is willing to take the time and the effort to keep going with them, I just worry that this is going to be a one-time deal for them, you know. And so that's a question that I want you to ask me, but I don't have an answer for, right?
Right.
It's difficult, and I think the only answer that I have is that anybody listening to this podcast, if you are not just a quail hunter, if you are a hunter
mm-hmm.
and you have a kid, I just implore you, if you're taking your kid hunting, ask your kid, hey, man, do you have a buddy at school that might want to come with us?
Yes.
That hasn't got, a mom or a dad that can take them out. And I think that's what we need to do is, to get a little bit more reach out there with kids that don't have that opportunity.
Totally. I will say, to speak positively for your I hate to say fear of lack of follow-up, is there's a study that was done that if a child shoots a BB gun by the age of 9 years old, they are more likely to return to an outdoor lifestyle. Now, it was from a study done from Daisy BB guns.
Oh, awesome. Okay.
And so, we're only talking BB guns there, but the whole idea is you plant a seed and you never know when that seed is going to take root blossom and grow. But you hope that just through that one
Yeah.
experience, it's enough to just leave a
So Johnny,
lasting impact.
I'm gonna try to follow up with your seed analogy there, and I'm going to try to say it, but I'm going to butcher it. So you know, all the listeners on this podcast, just be gracious on me. It's how does it go? You can count the apples on a tree, but you can't count the seeds in the app or the trees in the apple, something like that, right?
Yeah,
And the
yeah.
concept is, you know, you can count all the apples on a tree, but how many trees does that tree sprout? I'm
Yes.
really going to have to look up that definition, that little saying, because I try to say it every time.
There's another saying. I know exactly what the point of what you're saying is like, one apple is just one apple, but within that is so many seeds that can grow so many trees, and it's just
Right,
it's just compounding interest
right.
into the future and the longevity of that apple tree and the apple making a lasting legacy. One of the things that I love is the whole planting tree um, saying, where I think it's what a wise man plants a tree knowing that he'll never sit in the shade of it,
Right.
or
Yeah.
something
Yep.
to that effect. And it's
Yep.
like,
Absolutely.
that's wisdom, right? Like knowing that
Absolutely.
you are thinking in the future. We're in the Bible. I pull a lot of quotes from the Bible. Says, without vision, a lack of vision, the people perish, right?
Right.
And the whole idea is that if you don't have vision for the future, if you don't have vision for yourself, for the things you love, for the things you want to protect, and you can't see an end goal, an end destination, then it's going to perish.
Yeah.
Period. And
Yeah.
this is us having a vision for the future, making sure
Absolutely.
that the things that we love to do, things we love to pursue, the things we love to eat, like we can't forget that. Like
Yep.
we're doing it
Absolutely.
because they taste delicious, also,
Right.
and,
Absolutely.
and so, whether it's the dogs or just getting out in nature, all that, if we don't have a vision for the end goal, we're lost.
Right.
Then it's
Too
all
right.
for nothing.
Too right.
So I love it, brother. Dude, you're an awesome guy. I wanna go shoot some quail with you sometime. If you
Well, let's do it, buddy. I mean, you're not too far down the road, so let's chat this season. Let's get you out and let's get behind some dogs and
I would
and
love
let's
that.
go run down some birds.
I would love that. Well, just real quick before we wrap this up, all of you who are interested in checking out the Rolling Plains Quail Research Foundation, you can go to quailresearch.org. And that is how you get connected with everything that they are doing and everything that Principal O'Shawn Hennessy is doing and Ryan. But go check them out. There's a critter club for every animal, it seems like. And if quail is your thing, or upland bird is your thing, or you just want to learn more, right? Like hone your craft, be a student of the game, and know more, because the more that you learn is the more that you can talk about. And we all
Absolutely.
need to advocate for hunting and be able to talk about it. So go educate yourself. Thanks, Ryan, for being on, sharing your wisdom, your passion,
You're
and your love for
welcome,
the
Johnny.
outdoors.
And Johnny, on that, I'll just say to your listeners out there, if there's any Texas-based guys, September 17th to the 19th here in Abilene, we're going to be having the statewide quail symposium. It's a great event, statewide quail symposium. It's got a little bit of everything for everyone. So if you're free for a day or two, or the whole event, come on out. And then again, for your listeners, at our core, we are a research and an educational foundation. If anybody's out there and they want us to come and host a field day in their neck of the woods, just please, all of our contact information is on the website. Reach out to us. We would be absolutely delighted to come out and do that. And we meet with landowners all the time too. If you've got some questions about your property, let us know. We're here to help.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Awesome. Well, good luck on your upcoming adventures this fall. Are you doing any hunting besides quail?
Yes, so right after the symposium, we are actually planning on heading up to Wyoming for a week, and we're going to go and try to get into some chukar, some huns, some sage grouse, maybe some ruffed grouse, and yeah, so super pumped about that. And then no, we'll get back and focus on quail. But I have said that what, we probably need to put a deer or two in the freezer. It's been a while since we've done that. So
It's nice to have some red meat every now and then.
yeah. Nice to have some red meat. Little easier, a little more fulfilling long term in terms of quantity. So
Definitely. Well, guys, thank you so much for checking out this podcast. Ryan, thanks for joining us today. I really appreciate it. Remember, if you want hunting to last for generations to come, then you got to invest in the hearts and lives of other people, because hunting has the power to transform lives through primal adventure. For Johnny Mack here at Soul Seekers and Ryan at the Rolling Plains Quail Research Foundation, be blessed, freedom on, and as always, stay soulful. If you enjoyed today's podcast and want to support the show, you can always like, share, subscribe, and leave a rating, as it helps us share our mission of mentorship is conservation. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of Soul Seekers Nation as we transform lives through primal adventure.